and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous rates. In excelsis Deo, in excelsis Deo. Shepherds, while this jubilee, while your joyous strains prolong, would the gladsome tidings be which inspire your heavenly song. In excelsis Deo, in excelsis Deo. Come to Bethlehem and see Him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. In excelsis Deo, in excelsis Deo. Joy to the world, the Lord is come, and let earth receive her King, and let every heart prepare Him room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. And we will sing, sing, sing. Joy to the world. And we will sing, sing, sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns, and let men their songs employ. And while fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, and repeat the sounding joy. And we will sing, sing, sing. Joy to the world. And we will sing, sing, sing. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes every nation prove the glories of His righteousness, and wonders of His love, and wonders of His love, and wonders of His love. joy to the world, and we will sing, 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 and joyful, joyful, you adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love, and hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. Joyful, joyful, you adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love, and hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above.
Merry Christmas, Neighborhood Church. Thanks so much for joining us for a very special Christmas Eve edition of Church at Home. Hey, no matter where you are, who you are, or what your story is, we're so glad you've chosen to celebrate with us today. As we wrap up the year and head into a new one, we want you to stay in the loop with everything coming up here at Neighborhood Church. This January is bringing tons of opportunities for you to connect, grow, and serve with us as we follow Jesus together. You'll want to stay tuned over the next few weeks to ncvisalia.com, where you can sign up for weekly email updates, or you can follow us on social media on Facebook or Instagram. And better yet, you can take Neighborhood on the go by downloading the NC app to your phone or device. And if you're new to Neighborhood Church, we'd love to say hi. Hit the link below this video to fill out a digital Connect card, and one of our leaders will be in touch to help you take a next step with us. Hey, another quick announcement. Over the next 2 Sundays, December 27th and January 3rd, we will be meeting online only for Church at Home. Our outdoor services will be starting back up again on Sunday, January 10th. So plan on cozying up at home the next 2 Sundays as we gather online together. Lastly, thank you so much to everyone who continues to give to the mission of Neighborhood Church. 2020 has been a wild ride, but through it all, Neighborhood Church has stayed radically committed to being for Visalia. And it's because of your generous investment that we've been able to do that. There's 2 ways you can give right now. You can make an investment online at ncvisalia.com/give or by texting NC Visalia to 77977. And now, let's head into our teaching time. And once again, Merry Christmas, Neighborhood Church.
I've been thinking about it. This is my 44th Christmas, and it is by far the strangest Christmas I've ever experienced. The world feels so chaotic, so polarized, so angry, so scared. In fact, as I was reflecting on the last several months, I decided to land on just one word to help me personally sort of understand all that I've experienced, seen, heard, and felt in 2020. And the word I came up with was absurd. Absurd. Absurd is defined as wildly unreasonable, illogical, or inappropriate. And for me, what I find to be most absurd is how every single issue in our life is just becoming 2 opposite extremes, kind of yelling at each other, calling each other absurd for thinking what they think, right? Everything now is just black and white. It's this or that. Nuance has definitely left the building. It's honestly all getting a little absurd. Let me just give you a couple of examples, right? One camp says, COVID is a serious illness killing hundreds of thousands of people in the US alone. The other camp, no, COVID is just the flu, and this is all an attempt to press reset on society and create a one world order, right? Or masks slow the spread of COVID. No, they don't. Masks don't work, and they're simply just another example of government overreach. Or how about, let's take the vaccine, right? The science is sound and the side effects are minimal. No, I won't be taking the vaccine. It's garbage science and people are dying from the vaccine. Plus, Bill Gates might have put a chip in it. Or Joe Biden is the president-elect. No, absolutely not. This is the most corrupt election in the history of our country. The election was stolen. Or how about this one? Some claim 2,000 years ago, the creator of the universe became a human baby in the womb of a virgin, no less, and then lived for 30-ish years preaching, healing, and teaching in a Jewish colony of the Roman Empire. While others claim, absolutely not, there is no God, and even if there was, he, she certainly couldn't have been Jesus of Nazareth. See, in our year of absurdity, I've been reminded of the absurdity of the Christian claim that is Christmas. Christians make the totally unique, utterly astounding claim that a Jewish maiden gave birth to the creator of the universe. It's absurd. And the stories surrounding Jesus' birth continue to up the absurdity quotient of it all, right? Angels talking and singing to random shepherds on a hillside? Come on. Wise men following a star? How wise are you if you're following a star around the countryside? And if that wasn't absurd enough, the early adherents to the Jesus movement ran around the most powerful empire of the time, maybe in the history of the world, saying that this baby who became a man would ultimately be executed by Rome for crimes against the state. This man was actually in charge of the whole world. Now, anybody in the first century with even an ounce of political insight could see that Caesar was in charge of the world and the Roman legions ruled. The emperor, a son of the gods, was Lord. Anybody who thought otherwise was either blatantly ignorant, grossly delusional, or completely absurd. You know, and it's Christmas Eve, and I'm wondering, have you ever considered the absurdity surrounding the claims of Christmas? I thought this might be a good conversation for us to have this evening because I think at some point in your life, haven't we all wondered, is all of this really true? Now, I know we don't admit that during this time of year, right? You know, when your house is decorated with a bunch of baby Jesuses. I mean, this isn't really the time of year to go, hey, wait a minute, did all of this really happen, right? I mean, this is the season, even if you don't believe, you pretend to believe because, well, you really enjoy being invited over to your family's house for Christmas. This isn't the time to say, hey, Mom, I've been thinking about this whole thing. I think it's all a myth, right? So these aren't really thoughts we express. But at some point in your life, maybe you've wondered, is this for real? Because it all seems, well, a little absurd. Now, I think when it comes to the absurdity of the Christmas story, there are really two kinds of people, right? There are those of us who've just never really stopped to think about it because, well, it's what we've been taught since we were a kid. We were raised with it. But then there's others of us who, well, we just can't stop thinking about it. And I want you to know that that's okay. Because after all, just through the lens of reason, the Christmas story is, well, it's a difficult story to accept. And if you're listening and you're a person that says, you know what, I'm willing to just go along with the Jesus myth because after all, I'm an American, seems kind of an American thing to do, it's seasonal, my mama believed it, my mama's mama believed it, I mean, I went to mass, we went to church, I've got a nativity scene up in my house, right? I don't have to investigate it and make it historical, I can just kind of embrace the feelings and the goodwill of the season and stay in grandma's good graces. If that's you, then I think the three sentences I want us to look at this evening might just become the most important sentences for you in terms of demything Jesus' birth story and really demything the entire Bible for you. I might even say it this strongly. The big idea I want us to look at today may be what God will use in your life to chip away the myth perspective or the fairy tale version maybe you've always believed about Jesus. Let me show you what I'm talking about. See, the Christmas story you've grown up hearing, it actually comes from an ancient document written by a man named Luke. And what's interesting about Luke is that he wasn't Jewish. He was a pagan, a Gentile. And Gentile just means non-Jew, right? And he had his own gods, and he had his own religion, which means unlike the Jews of his day, Luke wasn't looking for a savior to be born and rescue the world. He wouldn't even known that that was a thing that he should be looking for. See, Luke had his own worldview, his own priorities, and they weren't wrapped up in some promise that Jewish God made to the Jewish people hundreds of years before he was born. See, he had a way of doing life, and, well, it was working for him, right? See, we also think this about Luke. We think that Luke was a bit of an academic. In fact, many scholars think he was probably a first century physician, a doctor. But at some point, Luke is introduced to the teachings of Jesus, and he believes them. He becomes a Christian. And this Luke, he had a friend named Theophilus. And Theophilus was most likely a Roman official, but he was also a Christian. Theophilus was the kind of Christian maybe that some of you are, right? Where we kind of believe in general, but he wasn't really sure about the specifics of the whole thing. Now, Luke and Theophilus lived during the time that people who knew Jesus were still running around. The eyewitnesses of Jesus' life were still alive. And Theophilus had questions. And he would say to Luke, Luke, I heard this story about Jesus. Did that really happen? And then I heard this story about Jesus. Well, did that one really happen? And Luke, I'm so confused. There are all these stories running around about Jesus, and I can't really put them in any sort of order. And so here's what Luke decided to do. Luke decided to sit down and write, as he calls it, an orderly account of the life of Jesus. And what's interesting, and what I want to show you today, is that it does not read like a myth. It does not read like a once upon a time fairy tale. And that's why I think that the passage of Luke's document that I want to read to you this evening may be the most important sentence in the Bible for you. Because if you tend to think, like many people think, like all of us would think if we didn't know any better, that perhaps the story of Jesus' birth is just a made-up, feel-good story that we read and rehearse this time of year to help give us meaning to the season. If that's how you're thinking, then I think how Luke opens his document is at the very least some pretty incredible food for thought. Here's how Luke began his letter, or this document. He wrote for his friend Theophilus. First words, right out of the chute, which I just find really interesting. Here's what he writes. Many have undertaken to draw up an account, not tell a story, not write a story, something more formal, an account, right? Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled or happened among us. And the things that he's talking about are the things surrounding the life of Jesus, right? Now, this is really fascinating. Luke, in the first century, before Jesus is a famous person, before the church spread all over the place, before there was a Christian Bible, Luke says, Theophilus, a lot of people are trying to get this story straight. A lot of people are trying to write an orderly account to take all of these random stories we've heard and put them in some sort of chronological order so we can know with certainty what happened. And I'm going to be one of those, Luke says. I'm going to write an orderly account. And of all of the accounts that were written, Luke's is one of just 4 that have endured for the last 2,000 years. But Luke goes on. So he writes, many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled among us, just as they were handed down to us, right? This is critical. These stories of Jesus have been handed down by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the word. Listen, Luke's saying to Theophilus, here's the deal. The stories that I'm going to hand down to you, the accounts that I'm about to put together, these aren't third hand. This isn't third-hand information. This wasn't 200 years after the fact. He said, I'm going to talk to the eyewitnesses, and to the best of my ability, I want to put together an account of what happened based on hearing from the people who were there. But let's keep moving. Luke continues, with this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Right? In other words, the story I'm about to retell, the account I'm about to give you of the life of Jesus, is the result of investigation. It is the result of time I've spent with eyewitnesses, people who are actually there. I've carefully investigated everything from the beginning. Then Luke says this, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know with the certainty of the things you've been taught. In other words, Theophilus, I'd been taught all these stories about Jesus and all these things that Jesus said and did, but again, they were just random stories sort of floating out there, right? And maybe you can relate. Maybe it's like your knowledge of the Bible, just kind of random stories of Jesus, but none of it seems to fit together or make much sense. And Luke, with firsthand accounts, with eyewitness testimony, with the people who are actually there for these events, decided to sit down and write an orderly account of the life of Jesus that he investigated, so he could give to Theophilus something that would give him certainty about the things that he believed. Now, here's why all of this is so important. If you're not a Christian, or you're considering Christianity, or maybe you've come back to Christianity, or maybe you are a Christian, you just have lots and lots of questions, here's something you should know. Christianity is not about belief in belief. It's not about having faith in faith. The foundation of Christianity is that something happened in history. The foundation of Christianity is rooted in events that actually took place. Christianity isn't based on someone's teachings, many faiths are. Christianity is rooted in events taken right out of history. And it all began in a little village just outside of Jerusalem called Bethlehem, when a child named Jesus was born. And Luke said to one of his contemporaries, I understand that you need more information, so I have thoroughly investigated this. I've done interviews with eyewitnesses, and what I'm about to tell you and what I'm about to give you is an orderly account. Not a story, but stuff that has actually happened among us. And many people are trying to get this straight, because what has happened in the birth of this child is so extraordinary. It's literally shifted the trajectory of the whole world, and we don't want to let any of the details slip away. So let's make sure we get this right. The story doesn't begin with a once upon a time or long ago in a land far, far away. No. This story, the story of Jesus, begins with a pagan intellectual who, after a thorough investigation, had come to embrace the teachings of Jesus during a time when the eyewitnesses were still alive, and he sat down for the sake of a friend to give an account. And the Christmas story you and I know isn't ancient creative writing. It is an investigative account written down by an educated elite whose conclusion was that when people woke up on that first Christmas morning, they were waking up to a brand new world, because in this infant Jesus, the world was being gifted with the Messiah, the Savior, divine love wrapped up in a human body, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Christmas story might be absurd, but if it is absurdly beautiful. It is absurdly hopeful. It is absurdly life-changing. This Christmas, I've been reminded of Christmas's absurd claims, and this Christmas, I continue to embrace them, and my life has never been the same. And you know what? We don't know much about Luke's friend Theophilus. But one thing we do know is we know this educated, successful member of society embraced Luke's account, because after he read it, he passed it on and invited other people to read it. And then those people invited their friends to read it. And people have been inviting their friends to read Luke's account of the birth of Jesus for nearly 2,000 years. And you know what? That's exactly what we did this evening. Listen, I love you all, and I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face. With the